Let's do this. मैं लाइव हूँ क्या?
जब तू
We'll be starting with the event shortly. Good afternoon. Thank, thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us today. I am Arnav Batra and I'll be your host for today's event, the Design Magnus. Design Magnus is the time of Zenevia to invoke your imagination and creativity without any restrictions with the exciting events under it. We are going to start with the logo design event. Let me introduce you all to the judges for today's event. Mr. Ibrahim Suleiman. He's a freelance graphic designer at IBM Graphics with the aim of strategically designing the brand's identity. He has an year-long experience in logo, brand, and corporate identity design for businesses. Our next judge is Mr. Harshit Pawar. He is a freelance logo designer with an aim of strengthening purpose-led brands. He has a year-long extensive experience in logo design and brand identity design. Well, when I got the opportunity to host this event, I myself did some research on digital design and logo design. When we talk about logo design, what comes to your mind? When you're considering all the factors that go into building a business, creating a logo might not seem like a top priority. Maybe I don't even need a logo at all. A little voice is whispering in the back of your mind. Don't listen to that voice because that couldn't be more wrong. Having a logo is an integral part of making your brand a successful one. Right up there with the high quality products and positive referrals. So, why is logo important? Because it grabs attention, makes a strong first impression, is the foundation of your brand identity, is memorable, it separates you from competition, it fosters brand loyalty, and is expected by your audience as well. Even if the brand names were not integrated into their design, I'm guessing at least 99.99% of people on the planet could recognize and name the brand each represents. Now, I would request the judges to tell you guys more about the digital design and this event. Over to you, judges.
Thank you very much, Mr. Apurva. We very much appreciate you starting with such an opening line. It's very inspiring. I think my partner has disconnected, and
You guys
I'm
can
going
start
to
with your
try and
presentation.
complete this by myself.
Ibrahim, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, my name is Ibrahim Suleiman. I'm from Nigeria, Kano State. I'm a final year student and I started graphic design 2020, last year. I have successfully built certain number of brands, and some of which you might see on my Instagram page and some which I haven't even posted because I don't have enough time to post a lot of them. But you can see that they are very, very interesting and it's a very nice job, and I really appreciate your efforts in bringing me to this Tech Fest. Thank you very much. We will be discussing about the design process, the process in which a person designs a logo from the beginning to the final stage of delivering the logo files to a client. First stage of the logo design process is the brief. Design brief is where you meet the client and discuss every single detail about their business, what they want to achieve, how they want it to look, what they want to communicate to their clients or customers, and everything that you need to know about the client. You need to ask in this first stage of design brief. We do not want to start research without fully knowing everything we need to know about the design, type of feeling we want to invoke when somebody interacts with that design. That is actually the first stage of the design. In the second stage, okay, I think my partner is here and I'm going to try and hand over to him so that he can explain everything in details to us.
Over to you.
So good afternoon, everyone. So I'll be
Good afternoon, Mr. Rashid.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. So I'll be taking you through the logo design process today in detail. So here are the 8 steps which we want to show you. First is design brief, research. Third is brainstorming. Then we go for sketching. Then we execute the design digitally. And then we prepare a presentation based on our design. Then we discuss with client on the design. Then we get the revisions. And sometimes we directly get the approval of the design. And then finally we deliver the design. So now we are going to see all eight process in detail. So first thing is logo design process, which I already told you. These are the 8 parts. So first is design brief. First our client approaches us. So we talk about their brand. What is their mission statement? How are they going to be standing out from others? And what do they think they can solve a problem which others are facing in this world? So we try to understand that their aim, mission, and objective properly, and what do they want? Do they want a rebrand, or do they, or is it a startup which for which they are looking a logo, or is the design not connecting to their target audience properly? So these are the few factors for which usually clients come to us for a design. So in design brief, we try to understand them properly via a chat or even a video call. And then second thing, we based on the industry the client's business has, we try to research on that. What colors do the target audience usually prefers, and who are their competitors, and how are their competitors doing in their designs and brand identity. So we try to look in depth into that, and plus we also do some extra research like how those products are made and what actually do they impact on others. So third thing, which is brainstorming. So over here we make, from that research we try to find the keywords from the research and from the brief. We try to find those perfect keywords, and also what emotions do they generate. So over here, I in my recent project, which was Sativa. So I had to create a logo for them. They were a trading company who would trade saffron from India to other countries like USA, UAE, and other Asian countries, South Asian countries. So over here, first I created a mind map. So as you can see, saffron sativa, which is connected to a flower, saffron, which is a flower, well-known flower, a purple color flower, and it has red or orange color stigma, from where the saffron is actually harvested. And it is also connected to a spice. It has got a fragrance. It has got a premium feel, and plus a saffron. So from this part of this branch, I then made another network which is bulb. The bulbs are actually what they use to in harvest to grow a saffron. First they sow these bulbs, and from where this saffron buds come up, then they forward it to other places to grow them properly. Mm, and then it's used in medicine, cosmetics, food, and it has got pointy leaves. So I made all this mind map using the information which I had, and talking to the client. So after this, there comes the sketching part, where we based on all these concepts, we try to link one to another. We try to link one of them, like red one and flower one. We take these two letters and we try to link them and try to create a logo based on these two words. And let's say I take premium and red and orange, and I can connect these two words and try to create a design or the logo concept out of this. So by this, you can use anything over here which is present in the mind map. So by this, we try to make a set of sketches. The sketches which I have shown here are actually the best one which I liked. These sketches won't be always perfect, so you don't have to worry if you don't get a perfect set. Sketches are usually rough ideas which we jot down on a paper. So it's totally fine if you don't even get perfect sketches in the first time. Out of all those 50 sketches, around 50 sketches, you will find few sketches which are actually matching to the brand values and what the clients actually want. So you need to identify them. And also, we should not restrict our brain to one idea. We should just sketch, and we should just sketch anything which comes to our mind, and let your ideas flow through the rough sketches only. And also, this is an important thing. We should always sketch them in black color, like any mono color, but we usually prefer black, because the logo should always work in a mono color, and usually black as mono color is used everywhere. So Ibrahim, anything you would like to add to this till now?
No, I think you've pretty much said everything about what I also wanted to say. We should always sketch everything that comes to our mind and not restrict our mind to one idea only. Anything that comes to your mind, you try and sketch it down. Even if it's 50, 70, even 100 sketches, you just try and jot them down. Anything that comes to your mind, no matter where you are, you should always hold your jotter and a pencil, because ideas can come in places you cannot even imagine. You might be walking down the street or drinking tea or eating or doing something else, and you'll just think of something fast, and you don't have time to go back home or go to work and start jotting it down. So you should always carry a simple jotter and pencil with you so that you can jot any idea that comes to your mind at any time.
Okay, so moving forward, we have design execution, in which we try to digitalize. We now digitalize the logo concept, which we have narrowed down from that set of 50 logo designs. So over here, you can see I first clicked the photo, and then I imported it to the software which I use, Adobe Illustrator. Then I actually use a perfect circle here, as you can see, so that the logo is more geometric and appealing. So I try to make it as geometric as possible, geometric and symmetric. So over here, you can see I have tried to trace different concepts over here. and then I even tried to modify them. So after this, to Ibrahim.
Yes, after that stage comes the refinement of concepts. The concepts that you've chosen here are almost 4 or 6 concepts, and you'll try and make them as perfect as possible, make them very geometric and symmetric, because a logo that is symmetric is more appealing to the eye. There are a lot of rules that we use in trying to make a logo look very pleasing. Sometimes we follow geometric rules, and sometimes we just use our eyes to try and balance what object or what elements should go what place. Most of the times we use geometric alignment, but sometimes we have to use our eyes and try to balance the objects, because using geometric alignment sometimes might not be as pleasing as you want it to be. After you've refined the concept, you try and finalize selected concepts. Each of these 6 concepts finally arriving in this stage. In this stage, you try and add a little bit of colors so that you can see how a certain logo concept would look on what surface. You have to create a color pattern that is very versatile and that can go with many of a brand's products. For example, you see there are a lot of colors in each of these particular designs. So there are a lot of varieties of colors that you can use in your design. You don't have to restrict yourself to 1 or 2 colors. When you have a very versatile logo with a very rich amount of colors, you can put it almost anywhere you like and it will fit perfectly. The next stage is
One
to
thing I would like to
choose
say.
matching fonts. Okay.
So over here you can see I have used this red color, golden color, and purple color in almost all the concepts. It's because that I use gold because to give a premium feel over here. The aim was to have a premium feel to the brand, and the red one I have used because the saffron stigma from which we make this saffron spice, they are red in color, so I have used this red color over here. And purple also gives a luxurious feel, so I have used purple over here. So I had these 3 colors in my color palette, which I already added to it in our design brief. I also tried to explore other colors like blue because it's more honest to people, and also green over here because it's healthy. Saffron actually has so many health benefits. If you try to explore, you will find many there. So, okay, now moving on to the next part.
Yes, the next part is to choose fonts that will match each of the logo concepts. Basically, there are 2 different categories of fonts, the serifs and the sans serifs. So you try and balance each of the font types with a particular logo concept. The next stage is to combine the logo mark with the typeface. After you've chosen a particular font type, you try and create the logo mark in variations so that you may not feel restricted in using it in any particular place. For example, when you create a logo mark, you might create it in a horizontal plane so that it can fit on a large screen, for example, a computer screen, or when you're projecting it or something like that. But when you are restricted to a mobile device, for example, you can try to realign it and convert it to be on the vertical plane and make sure it fits perfectly without leaving any gaps or any places unfilled. In this place, you try and create a lot of variations of the logos. For example, there's the horizontal plane, there is the vertical plane, and there is alternate logos. For example, very small icons, the ones that we can use on apps, and other web icons that you do not have to use the complete logo. This is very important because if you can view a lot of the world's top brands. They have a lot of variable logo concept. The logo type they use on their website might be different from what they use on their logo icon, on their app icon, or on their website. It's very important to create a versatile logo because it helps making the brand recognizable in all situations. The next step is the presentation. We present a logo in the context relevant to a client's brand. You cannot present a logo on, for example, say a shopping bag when the logo is actually supposed to go on a computer or something like that. You make sure that all your presentations are relevant to the client's brand. We do not create very abstract presentation just because they look appealing. We use different mockups and colors to present our logos. Using relevant logos is very important because it's one of the things that makes a logo look very realistic, even before we actually have to print it to life. Because the mockups will show you how exactly a particular logo would look in reality without having to print it on a product or on a wall or something like that. It's very important to create relevant mockups. We display logos in different brands and we always present it in monocolor because you might not know when you are going to have to use a logo on a single color background and you will not know how the logo would look if you haven't tried it all in different colors. Using different colors gives you a very strong power because you can use the logo in different situations, as I've said, time without number. Using it on a different color will give you strength of versatility. You have very much places. There are very many places you can use the logo in, and you should try and keep it as minimal as possible because you don't want it to look cluggy when it's resized to a small icon, for example, an app icon. So you have to keep the logo very minimal and present it in a very well-situated manner. Is there anything you'd like to add on, Mr. Harshit?
No, it's perfectly fine. You explained it very well. So now let's move on to next one.
Okay, thank you very much. The next stage is the revision stage or approval stage. We present the logo with necessary mockups and variations to the client. Sometimes the client will view them and accept them the way they are because they look very pleasing and he or she likes the way they look. But most of the times we have to change one or two things in order to improve the quality of the logo. For example, this grand view interiors here was revised and added a rooftop on it because we want to show in the logo that this brand is for an interior decoration brand. If you view the first stage without the rooftop, you might not get the general idea of what the logo should represent. But with the aim of the rooftop, you can immediately see that this logo is for an interior design brand, and you can use the logo alone without even writing Grand View Interiors, and it will make perfect sense without the use of the logo name. This is what I was talking about the versatility of a logo. You see, without the rooftop, the logo would not look as informative as it should on a very small place, for example, a web icon or an app icon. But with the aim of the rooftop, it will make very much more sense to anybody looking at it, and it would look very pleasing. The next stage is the delivery stage. We try to deliver the final logo and the identity guidelines on how to use it, where to use it, and what format to use it. We use different color variations and we make sure we submit all hex codes or RGB codes to the clients in case they need to change it or revise it with another graphic designer, not necessarily you. These are a list of the delivery files that we usually deliver to a client. The brand identity guidelines showing how and where the logo should be used, and a lot of other guidelines which I've already stated in the logo brief. The logo sheet and logo copyright transfer agreement are usually paperwork that we fill before and after a design project. The next deliverable is the logo package. There are two forms, the digital and the print version. The digital version usually is done in RGB code, and the printed version is usually made in CMYK, unless when we are using very later technologies to print the printed version. The digital version usually consists of the JPEG file, PNG file, and the source files. The print version usually consists of the PDF files and the vector files. The next is the social media profile, which usually is in JPEG for the graphic, the brand to use on their social media profiles, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, and what have you. These, however, are not necessarily required in this step first. The files that we require have already been stated in the logo brief, but if you wish, you can add more delivery files for bonus points. A few bonus points that we've listed here are very important and we should adhere to them. It's not must, but we really should do so. We walk through every step of the design process with the client, no matter what step you're working at. Is it the brief? Is it the research, the brainstorming, the sketching? Every step we should walk through it with the client. The client might have something they would like to change, and they might not know it until you are very far, maybe in the revision stage or the delivery stage at last. But if you are working through every stage with the client would know, I would like to change this, I would like to add this, I would like to change this, I would like to remove this, and you wouldn't have to feel burdened by having to start from the beginning again, or maybe yes, you might be making you to start from the very beginning. The next bonus point is to always ask questions, no matter what step you're at, no matter where you are doing, what you're doing. You should never assume, I think this is what the client would like, or I think this is what would look better. We should ask the clients, no matter what we are doing. We shouldn't judge or make final decisions for a brand without first consulting the clients we're working with. We should ask them questions, and sometimes, most of the times, they have some valuable information that we may like to use. I think this is all we have to say for this logo design process. Everything has been explained from the very beginning to the very end in details, and I hope everybody has understood a thing or two in this design process that we just presented. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day. Is there anything you'd like to add on, Mr. Harshit?
No, it was perfectly fine, and now I'd like to take some questions if they have any.
Thank you for your insightful brief. This will really help the participants, and these are some of the things which even I didn't know. All right, so Ibrahim and Harshit, what did you find intriguing in logo designing?
Uh, First thing is that this is just a small part of design, but it takes so much of time and effort to design it. That was the most intriguing thing which I found. So I wanted to explore this area, like for a just small mark, how much time does it take and how much thinking does it take? So I explored this area and I got in love with it. I just loved it, and so I started continuing it.
Yes, the most thing I find very intriguing is the actual design process in which you have to generate an idea, make the research, especially the research part. You have to take into consideration what the competitors are, who they are, how big they are, what they do, and all such questions. And especially when you come to the final stages of the research, where you have to finalize everything and start making your sketches based on your research information. That is really the most intriguing part for me. I really enjoy making researches. It's the nicest part for me in the design process.
And how do you manage your college and professional logo designing together?
Yeah, it's an engineering
Wow,
college,
this
so we
one's
don't.
very hard.
I am an engineering
I'm
student, so
actually
okay, you go, Ibrahim first.
I'm currently not studying logo design or graphic design or any art design for that matter in my college. I'm studying BSc biology and I'm currently in my final year of studies. And I find it really, really stressful to try and balance both my professional graphic design and university project all at once. I have to like make timetables for everything, try and arrange how my schedules are going to be. Sometimes I will not post or even take any graphic design work for a week or two, sometimes even months, because I have schoolwork to do. But for example, last year when we have a lot of time in our hands, it was really easy, and I did a lot of projects, over 50 projects that I did last year on graphic design. It's very hard, but you'll come to find it very interesting when you get the hang of it.
So I'm actually a engineering student from India, and since you all know that for engineering we just study in last few days and then we go and write the exams. So rest of the time is actually I'm actually free, so I just do this graphic design thing. And last year I started during lockdown, and I built my portfolio and a lot of things. So it was actually great. I just don't take client work before exam days and prepare for exams. That's the thing. That's how I try to balance actually.
All right, so tell us something about your journey in design. Like, how did you start logo designing or digital design?
The first thing I'd like to say is that graphic design was, I don't know, maybe something I grew up admiring. I love drawing since I was a little boy. I'd try and draw characters from cartoons. I like Tom and Jerry, SpongeBob, Scooby-Doo, and a lot of other interesting cartoons. That was when I started, but as a career, I only just started it last year and I find it very interesting because I already know how to draw and sketch very beautiful sketches. So it was a very swift transition from the paper and pencil work to finally digitalizing it. It was very, very easy for me.
So my how it actually started is I took part in my college graphic designing team for a fest. So I really enjoyed it and I just fell in love with graphic designing. So during lockdown I actually got time to explore different niches in graphic designing. So I went with logo design and I just enjoyed it. So I just started doing logo design and I later on I got clients and everything went well, started going well. So
All right, so we have some questions from the participants who are there on the live. So we have a question from Pushpa. Which font we must prefer while logo designing?
So for font, they are actually different for different industries. So best example would be if we take a fashion industry, they usually prefer slim fonts and serif type fonts, which have got the sharp points at the end of the what to say, the alphabets. So that actually stylizes the font, and it matches very well with the fashion industry. So they prefer that thing. And if we look at some industries such as technological industries, they usually prefer a bold font, which is sans serif font, a bold and very clear font, which also looks really modern. So based on the industry, and if we do some research, we can actually find out what kind of fonts do other competitors use. So based on that, we can try to select the best font for the brand on which we are working. So this is how we select the best.
Yes, that's usually it. In the research process, you come across a lot of other companies and you try and find every single detail about them that you can. Everything. You make notes on the font types, the color palette they use, what type, do they use a clip art or do they just make vague, this thing, very plain logos without the use of any clip art or PNGs? What type of everything should be in order? And if you try and do your research perfectly, you'll find very useful information from other brands. Like my friend here, Harshit, said, the fashion industry, they really use very cursive fonts like fashion, especially hair products and something like that. They like very curvy and flashy fonts. And the technological industry use bold sans serif fonts that are very futuristic, and they usually add a chrome texture to it to make it look very futuristic and technological. So all this is something you can find in your research process, and it's going to help you a lot in your design career.
Actually, you can find it in brainstorming process also, because all these fonts actually hold some emotions. Like sans serif font will hold some bold emotions, and a serif font will hold some feministic emotions and elegant emotions. So these are basically, if they match with brand's emotions, you can use those fonts. You don't even have to look at
Exactly.
what other companies are using. It's just that simple.
Exactly.
All right. So we have a question from Manish. Are there any golden rules while working on logos? It's a very good question.
Ibrahim, you would like to go?
Okay. There are a lot of rules that people usually like to follow when designing logos. Some people used to follow the Fibonacci ratio or the golden ratio to design each of their logos. I personally know someone that wouldn't design any logo without following that rule. And other rules are the color rule, where you use 60% of a color to make it the primary color of the brand, 30% color for the secondary color, and then 10% color for the accents. These are just a few of some of the rules that we follow in graphic design. Another rule is to not copy other works. You should have to be very creative and create everything you like to design.
I would like to add further to this. So you don't actually have to follow any rules, because it actually restricts your creativity. You don't have to follow grid. You don't have to follow golden ratio. Just go freehand. Just try to make it look matching to the brand and also appealing. Even if it doesn't follow any rule, it's perfectly fine. So you
Exactly.
don't have to restrict yourself to following rules only, because that will restrict your creativity. So I don't suggest following any rules. That's the answer.
Yes, you should let your mind run very free on this one. And it says so right here in this logo design process. You shouldn't restrict yourself to one idea or one rule like that. You should let your imagination run wild. Think of everything that you can and then put it down digitally.
All right. Thank you so much, Ibrahim, and thank you so much, Harshit. Thanks for joining, and it was a very good session. It was a very insightful session. Any
Thanks
more,
for inviting us.
any more questions in the chat?
No, I think we're okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We're really inspired. Thank you for
Thank you
joining.
very much.
Thank you for joining, Harshit.
It's a great honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, guys.
Thank you.
आइए क्या अभी मेरी ऑडियो नहीं जा रही ना स्ट्रीम पे
अबे विल बी राइट बैक डालो वहां पे चलती
The back and forth has got me so messed up. Don't ignore the signs. We've had enough of the whole damn thing that we got going. You hold the strings without me knowing. Why do I have to suffer through the thinking? Why do I have the feeling that we're sinking? I need to find a way. Find a way. Find a way. Find a way out. What's all this for? It's got me turned around, but I can't ignore the feelings that I found in this whole damn thing that we got going. You hold the strings without me knowing. Why do I have to suffer through the thinking? Why do I have the feeling that we're sinking? I need to find a way. Find a way. Find a way. Find a way out. Find a way out. Find a way out. Find a way out. Find a way out.
All right, so now we're going to start with the UI UX event. I would like to introduce you all to the judge for today's event, Mr. Amit Yogiraj. He's a senior UX consultant at NatWest. Having an experience of more than 5 years, he has designed multiple web and mobile experiences for small and medium-sized companies. He has shared a lot of valuable content on Instagram with more than 45,000 followers. Well, what comes to your mind when we talk about user interface and user experience? The primary goal of any business is to increase its sales and increase the growth of the business. UX UI design plays an essential role in achieving this goal. The UX UI design of the application improves the user experience and customer satisfaction that ultimately helps increase the number of users of the specific application. Since people are usually personally impacted and drawn to a good website, it means they'll be more likely to turn into a customer and go on to recommend your business to their friends or family members. Amit sir has shared with us a video on interaction design. Let's jump straight to that video.
Here we'll explain what interaction design is, show some useful models, and finally we'll briefly describe what an interaction designer usually does. Interaction design is an important component within the umbrella of user experience design. Interaction design can be understood in simple but not simplified terms. It's the design of the interaction between users and products. Most often, when people talk about interaction design, they talk about software products like apps or websites. The goal of interaction design is to create products that enable the user to achieve their objectives in the best way possible. If this definition sounds broad, that's because the field is rather broad. The interaction between a user and a product often involves elements like aesthetics, motion, sound, space, and many more. And of course, each of these elements can involve even more specialized fields like sound design for the crafting of sounds used in user interactions. As you might already realize, there's a huge overlap between interaction design and UX design. After all, UX design is about shaping the experience of using a product, and most part of that experience involves some interaction between the user and the product. But UX design is more than interaction design. It also involves figuring out which experiences will be the most relevant for your users, the best way of creating them, and the best way of validating the design. For that, you also need user research, personas, user testing, and so on. The 5 dimensions of interaction design is a useful model to understand what interaction design involves. The first dimension is words. Words, and especially the ones we use in interactions, like the button label on the image, should be meaningful and simple to understand. They should communicate information to users, but not so much information that they overwhelm the user. The second dimension is visual representations. This concerns graphical elements like images, typography, and icons that users interact with. Icons and images usually supplement the words used to communicate information to users. Even if you don't know Chinese, you can probably tell the camera app from the map on this Android interface because you recognize the icons. The third dimension relates to the physical objects that users use to interact with the product. This could be things like a laptop, a mouse, a touchpad, or a smartphone. It also relates to what kind of physical space the user interacts in. For instance, is the user standing in a crowded train while using the app on a smartphone, or sitting at a desk in the office surfing the website? These factors all affect the interaction between the user and the product. The fourth dimension is time. While this dimension might sound a little abstract, it refers to aspects of the interaction that unfold over time, such as animation, videos, and sounds. Motion and sounds play a crucial role in giving visual and audio feedback to users' interactions. For instance, look at the feedback an iPhone gives you when you send a message. The small animation and the swoosh sounds gives you subtle feedback that your message has been sent. You can also think of time in relation to the amount of time a user spends interacting with the product. Can users track their progress or resume their interaction sometime later, and so on. The fifth dimension is behavior, which basically relates to the user side of the interaction, both in terms of how they interact with the product and how they react to the product. In relation to interaction, the previous dimensions come together to define how users perform actions and operate the product. The user's reaction obviously also relates to whether you've designed the previous 4 dimensions to create a compelling and positive experience for the user. So how do interaction designers work with the 5 dimensions to create meaningful interactions? To get an understanding of that, we can look at usability.gov's important questions interaction designers ask when designing for users. The first is, what can a user do with their mouse, finger, or stylus to directly interact with the interface? This helps us define the possible user interactions with the product. The answer to this question obviously depends on the type of product, so you have to look at the action possibilities of the particular product you're working with. For instance, an iPad has a number of predefined gestures available to the user. Here we'll explain what interaction design is, show some useful models, and finally we'll briefly describe what an interaction designer usually does. Interaction design is an important component within the umbrella of user experience design. Interaction design can be understood in simple but not simplified terms. It's the design of the interaction between users and products. Most often, when people talk about interaction design, they talk about software products like apps or websites. The goal of interaction design is to create products that enable the user to achieve their objectives in the best way possible. If this definition sounds broad, that's because the field is rather broad. The interaction between a user and a product often involves elements like aesthetics, motion, sound, space, and many more. And of course, each of these elements can involve even more specialized fields like sound design for the crafting of sounds used in user interactions. As you might already realize, there's a huge overlap between interaction design and UX design. After all, UX design is about shaping the experience of using a product, and most part of that experience involves some interaction between the user and the product. But UX design is more than interaction design. It also involves figuring out which experiences will be the most relevant for your users, the best way of creating them, and the best way of validating the design. For that, you also need user research, personas, user testing, and so on. The 5 dimensions of interaction design is a useful model to understand what interaction design involves. The first dimension is words. Words, and especially the ones we use in interactions, like the button label on the image, should be meaningful and simple to understand. They should communicate information to users, but not so much information that they overwhelm the user. The second dimension is visual representations. This concerns graphical elements like images, typography, and icons that users interact with. Icons and images usually supplement the words used to communicate information to users. Even if you don't know Chinese, you can probably tell the camera app from the map on this Android interface because you recognize the icons. The third dimension relates to the physical objects that users use to interact with the product. This could be things like a laptop, a mouse, a touchpad, or a smartphone. It also relates to what kind of physical space the user interacts in. For instance, is the user standing in a crowded train while using the app on a smartphone, or sitting at a desk in the office surfing the website? These factors all affect the interaction between the user and the product. The fourth dimension is time. While this dimension might sound a little abstract, it refers to aspects of the interaction that unfold over time, such as animation, videos, and sounds. Motion and sounds play a crucial role in giving visual and audio feedback to users' interactions. For instance, look at the feedback an iPhone gives you when you send a message. The small animation and the swoosh sounds gives you subtle feedback that your message has been sent. You can also think of time in relation to the amount of time a user spends interacting with the product. Can users track their progress or resume their interaction sometime later, and so on. The fifth dimension is behavior, which basically relates to the user side of the interaction, both in terms of how they interact with the product and how they react to the product. In relation to interaction, the previous dimensions come together to define how users perform actions and operate the product. The user's reaction obviously also relates to whether you've designed the previous 4 dimensions to create a compelling and positive experience for the user. So how do interaction designers work with the 5 dimensions to create meaningful interactions? To get an understanding of that, we can look at usability.gov's important questions interaction designers ask when designing for users. The first is, what can a user do with their mouse, finger, or stylus to directly interact with the interface? This helps us define the possible user interactions with the product. The answer to this question obviously depends on the type of product, so you have to look at the action possibilities of the particular product you're working with. For instance, an iPad has a number of predefined gestures available to the user and designer to take advantage of. The second question is, what about the appearance, such as color, shape, and size, give the user a clue about how it functions? This helps us give users clues about what behaviors are possible. If you look at the cutout from interactiondesign.org, you can see that we use the color blue to tell our users where text is interactive. We also use shading and the square shape to indicate to users that there's a button that can be pressed. The third question is if your error messages provide a way for the user to correct the problem or explain why the error occurred. This lets the user anticipate and mitigate errors. If you create error messages that make no sense to the user, they'll quickly become frustrated with your product. The fourth question asks what feedback a user gets once an action is performed. Asking this allows us to ensure that the system provides feedback in a reasonable time after user actions. In the example here, Twitter provides feedback to the user both when they input information right, with the little check mark, and when they input information wrong, by providing information about what the problem is. The fifth question is, are the interface element a reasonable size to interact with? Questions like this helps us think strategically about each element used in the product. Users interact with devices of many different sizes, and what you can interact with on a laptop is not necessarily the same as what you can interact with on a phone. The final question asks if familiar or standard formats are used. Standard elements and formats are used to simplify and enhance the learnability of a product. Play control icons, like the play and pause on the Apple TV remote, are a good example of a widely known standard. So, what do interaction designers do? Well, it depends. For instance, if the company is large enough and has enough resources, it might have separate jobs for UX designers and interaction designers. In a large design team, there might be a UX researcher, an information architect, an interaction designer, and a visual designer, for instance. But for smaller companies and teams, most of the UX design job might be done by 1 to 2 people who might or might not have the title of interaction designer. In any case, we can divide a lot of the tasks interaction designers handle in their daily work into 2 categories: design strategy and wireframes and prototyping. When interaction designers work with design strategy, they are concerned with what the goals of the user are and in turn what interactions are necessary to achieve these goals. Depending on the company, interaction designers might have to conduct user research to find out what the goals of the users are before creating a strategy that translates into interactions. How interaction designers work with wireframes and prototypes again depends on the job description of the company, but most interaction designers are asked to create wireframes that lay out the interactions in the product. Sometimes interaction designers might also create interactive prototypes and high-fidelity prototypes that look exactly like the actual app or website. Here we've provided you with an overview of what interaction design is, but if you're interested in finding out more about interaction design, we encourage you to read our encyclopedia chapter called Interaction Design Brief Intro by Jonas Löfgren. The chapter provides a great introduction to the field as well as other references where you can learn more.
Moving on to the third segment of Design Magnus, which is the vector art segment. As you certainly know, vector art and digital illustration are a big trend with the graphic design world. We see vector artworks everywhere, from fashion illustrations, motion graphics, print media to web design. Vector art is hip and everywhere. That's official. Where once illusion was graphic design's lesser known cousin, it has now re-emerged, having been rejuvenated, reworked, and rethought. The ever-growing success of vector art has not occurred overnight. For years now, a group of talented illustrators all over the world have been spearheading the vector art movement by producing great work that simply could not be neglected by design trendsetters and media. Now, let me introduce to our judge for this competition. Unfortunately, the judge will not be able to join right now because of the time difference of a country. Miss Maria Fadiva. She's an illustrator and animator and a lot more than this. Her work bridges characters, illustration with graphic design and animation. Born in Western Siberia, at the age of 5, she had a dream to become an artist. Since then, she has been excelling in this field. And Miss Maria Fadiva has a video for us. So let's jump right to that video. All the participants will have a chance to interact with our judge through Discord, and all the communication for Design Magnus will be made through emails and through notifications on the Discord server. Please do join. Thank you all for being a part of this event. I would like to thank the judges for sparing out time and being a part of the panel. I'm sure each one of us must have gained something positive from this event. Thank you so much.
The back and forth has got me so messed up. Don't ignore the signs. We've had enough of the whole damn thing that we got going. You hold